Thank you very much, Vladimir.
Next time in Moscow.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I don't know. I'll get a little heat on that one, but I could see it possibly happening. Thank you very much, Vladimir. And thank you all. Thank you.
Next time in Moscow. And that's an interesting one. Those were the words with which much-awaited summit in Alaska concluded between Russian President Vladimir Putin and the US President Donald Trump.
A success for the United States and a success for Russia. Obviously, the main thing that came out of this is that first we saw a very cordial, friendly relationship between Putin and Trump. Trump and treat Putin as an equal, with all dignity, with all respect. Also, he was very friendly.
The reason why it is a success for Russian President Vladimir Putin is because he was welcomed with a red carpet. At the same time, when all American allies in Europe and other places have imposed a strong sanction on Russian President Vladimir Putin, including a travel ban, at the same time, Donald Trump is welcoming him with a red carpet. So this gives a layer of extra legitimacy to Russian president without even having done any discussion on ceasefire, and goes back with the same state-like reception that he came for.
Putin has immediately gone back to business after reaching Moscow. Amid anticipation of a second summit expected to take place as early as next Sunday.
Еще раз была возможность спокойно, детально еще раз изложить нашу позицию. Мы, разумеется, с уважением относимся и к позиции американской администрации, которая видит необходимость скорейшего прекращения боевых действий. Ну и мы тоже этого бы хотели. Хотели бы перейти к решению всех вопросов мирными средствами. Разговор был очень откровенным, содержательным. И, на мой взгляд, это приближает нас к нужным решениям.
Trump, on the other hand, is back from Anchorage in Alaska to his anchor playing golf.
No, I don't think so. Trump realistically evaluates the situation. He admits that he can impose new sanctions against Russia, but they will be ineffective. He understands that Russia wins in this conflict, and therefore he offers the Russian version of finish the conflict to partners from Ukraine and EU.
It looks like Trump and Putin achieved some principal agreement or principal partially agreement, and now Trump is preparing this meeting, common meeting, to put down the principal agreement on the paper.
But would the calm in DC last long, with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky making his way to the US Capitol tomorrow to meet President Trump? His first outing to the States since the February debacle.
Отримую доповідь від нашої розвідки, від дипломатів про підготовку зустрічі на Алясці, про те, з чим їде Путін. Ми отримуємо також доповідь з регіонів України після російських ударів. Суми, російський удар по центральному ринку, Дніпровщина, удари по містах та підприємствах, Запоріжжя, Херсонщина, Донеччина, свідомі російські удари. Війна триває саме через те, що немає не тільки наказу, але й сигналів про підготовку Москви завершувати цю війну. В день перемовин вони теж вбивають, і це багато говорить.
I think the second summit or the second meeting will mark a very strong divide, ideological worldview divide between Trump and Europe. And when I mean Europe, I mean the European Union policies of most countries, with the exception of Slovakia and with the exception of Hungary, because most of the European Union, either center-right or center-left, they have the same worldview, a Russophobic worldview, a globalist worldview, a neocon worldview, and they are 100% behind the puppet regime in Kiev, in Ukraine.
At the beginning of the war, the then US President Joe Biden had already imposed a lot of sanctions and frozen Russian assets in the country at that moment. So it already imposed an economic blockade. On the military point of view, I do not think Donald Trump has any essential leverage that the United States can actually use against Russia. So clearly, I do not think that Trump has the capacity or the capability to enforce any coercive action.
Meanwhile, Europe is still scrambling. Just today, France, Germany and the United Kingdom held virtual talks on Trump-Putin-Alaska summit, assessing the situation as it stands.
Нас разделяет только Берингов. И вот сегодня мы слышим, когда президент Трамп говорит, что если бы я был президентом, то войны бы не было. Я думаю, что так бы на самом деле и случилось. Я подтверждаю это, потому что в целом у нас с президентом Трампом наладился очень хороший деловой и доверительный контакт, и у меня есть все основания полагать, что, двигаясь по этому пути, мы можем дойти и чем быстрее, тем лучше, до завершения конфликта на Украине. Благодарю вас за внимание.
I've always had a fantastic relationship with President Putin, with Vladimir. We had many tough meetings, good meetings. We were interfered with by the Russia hoax. That made it a little bit tougher to deal with, but he understood it. I think he's probably seen things like that during the course of his career.
However, reactions from across Europe were quite mixed. Nations like Czech Republic called Putin's statements propagandistic nonsense. The EU signaled that they won't sit this one out and will work with Ukraine instead. Meanwhile, leaders like Hungary's Viktor Orban called the meeting historic, claiming that the world today is much more safer than it was yesterday. With the second summit now expected in Moscow, the number one question everybody's asking: who has the upper hand?
In my point of view, the diplomatic position of Moscow seems stronger. The West and US has no leverage on Russia. New sanctions seems ineffective, taking into account the experience of Russia. At the same time, the Russian army has an advantage on the battlefield.
Maybe, but we need to understand that both sides, Russia and the United States, tried to use the shape of this negotiation round like an instrument on influence on the position of the side.
Not a lot has changed from the Alaska summit. The expectations still remain the same from US, Russia and Ukraine.
Les questions des territoires occupés seront des éléments déterminants d'une négociation de paix. Elles sont inséparables des garanties de sécurité qui sont apportées au reste du territoire ukrainien et à l'Europe, et qu'elles ne peuvent être discutées sans la présence du président ukrainien autour de la table. Il n'y a pas aujourd'hui de manière sérieuse des schémas d'échanges territoriaux qui sont sur la table.
Trump still is on the hunt for a ceasefire deal, as he thinks even a short-term ceasefire can win him a Nobel shot. Zelensky, who will be meeting Trump tomorrow, is expected to repeat his demand for a ceasefire, complete withdrawal of Russian troops, and most importantly, a strong pitch of no land swap and no territorial concessions. Putin, on the other hand, is still adamant on his red lines: demilitarization of Ukraine and control over gained territories.
Нашим странам важно и нужно перелистнуть страницу и вернуться к сотрудничеству. Символично, что неподалеку на границе России и США, как я уже говорил, проходит так называемая линия перемены дат, где можно буквально перешагнуть из вчера в завтра. И надеюсь, что у нас так и получится в политической сфере.
If we're able to operationalize these aspects of Russia's war play, then there is a strong reasons to believe that Russia might start to reconsider its own position on the war, which is not going in the best of its direction.
We'll have a good chance when this is over. So, just to put it very quickly, I'm going to start making a few phone calls and tell them what happened. But we had an extremely productive meeting and many points were agreed to. There are just a very few that are left. Some are not that significant. One is probably the most significant, but we have a very good chance of getting there. We didn't get there, but we have a very good chance of getting there.
Trump is optimistic, Putin is pragmatic, and Ukraine is skeptical. That's the hand dealt at the global high table this week. Is this the constellation of success or the recipe for a disaster? Only time will tell.